4 years ago, 5 years ago, NVIDIA was spending about $15 billion a year in Taiwan. Now, we're spending going to $150 billion in Taiwan each year.
Hi, welcome to Nexnetia Intelligence. The founder of the world's most valuable AI company just pledged $150 billion a year, every year, to a single island roughly 80 miles off the coast of mainland China. Not diversifying away from the risk. Doubling down on it. Why would the most resource-rich company in the industry make that bet, when it could build almost anywhere on Earth? The answer is not sentiment. It is physics. NVIDIA does not own the machine that makes its own chips possible. Neither does Microsoft, Google, or Amazon. One company builds it. One country hosts almost all of it. And the entire trillion-dollar AI market is quietly collateralized against that single point of failure. The machine is called an EUV lithography system. It burns patterns onto silicon using light with a wavelength of just 13.5 nanometers, thinner than a virus, roughly 1/100th the width of the transistor features it must draw with atomic precision. Think of it less like a printer and more like a tattoo needle capable of engraving a detail smaller than a strand of DNA, millions of times, across a wafer the size of a dinner plate, without a single line drifting off course. One company on the planet builds this machine, ASML, based in Veldhoven, the Netherlands. Not a rival. Not a fast follower. The only one. Nikon and Canon, Japan's two lithography giants, tried and could not replicate the optics. That is not a market share statistic. That is a closed door. And the door is getting narrower. ASML's current generation low-NA EUV machines run roughly $183 to $220 million each. The company's new high-NA system, the TWINSCAN EXE 5200B, costs approximately $370 to $400 million per unit, installed. In all of 2024, ASML sold exactly 44 EUV machines, worldwide, across every chipmaker on the planet combined. 44 machines. That is the entire annual supply feeding the AI revolution. But owning the blueprint for the machine means nothing without somewhere to run it at scale. And there is exactly one company doing that. That one company is TSMC, the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, and it is the only foundry on Earth actually running EUV machines at the volume the AI industry requires. ASML builds the tool. TSMC is the operator with the trained hands, the calibrated fabs, and the decade of accumulated process knowledge to make it work at scale. Owning the tool is not the same as knowing how to use it at scale. Within hours of that briefing, ASML's shares fell 3.3% in Europe, roughly $17 billion in market value erased before the trading day closed. High-NA EUV, the $400 million per unit machine, is still not in TSMC's high-volume production lines. Some analysts estimate TSMC may not adopt it for mass manufacturing until around 2031. That is not hesitation. That is the world's dominant foundry doing the math on a machine so expensive that even it is rationing its exposure. Samsung made a different bet. It has already committed to 2 high-NA machines, a combined outlay of roughly $773 million, before either unit has proven itself in volume production anywhere in the world. One foundry is waiting. One is gambling early. Neither can do without the machine entirely. And ASML itself is the bottleneck behind the bottleneck. The company plans to build only about 20 high-NA units per year by 2028. 20 machines. For the entire global semiconductor industry. For every chipmaker racing to build the next generation of AI accelerators. Scarcity at the machine level does not stay contained there, it propagates. Every fab that cannot get a high-NA slot falls a full process generation behind, and every chip designer waiting on that fab inherits the delay. The bottleneck is a governor, throttling the industry's ceiling from one facility in the Netherlands. TSMC is not just the most important foundry. It is the choke point's choke point. And that concentration is not evenly spread across its business, it is stacking, hard, in exactly the nodes AI depends on. Nexnetia Strategic Intelligence. Remember the $150 billion question this analysis opened with: why the industry's richest company keeps betting everything on one island. That bet is now showing up directly in TSMC's own books, and the concentration is starker than most investors realize. Advanced nodes, 7 nanometers and below, the class of process that every serious AI chip requires, made up 74% of TSMC's total wafer revenue in 2025. A decade ago that figure was a small fraction of the business. 3 nanometer alone contributed 24% of 2025 revenue. 5 nanometer contributed another 36%. 2 process generations now carry the majority of the company's entire income. Put simply, if either of those 2 node generations stumbles, TSMC's entire income statement stumbles with it. The scale behind those percentages is staggering on its own. TSMC's Q3 2025 revenue reached roughly $33.1 billion, up about 41% year-over-year. Full year 2025 revenue landed near $122.4 billion, growth of 35.9%. TSMC now holds an estimated 70 to 72% share of the global pure-play foundry market, and its 2025 revenue alone exceeded the combined revenue of every other foundry competitor on the planet, $122.5 billion versus roughly $47 billion for the rest of the industry combined. One factory floor now outproduces every competitor on Earth combined, not by a small margin, but by more than double. At the same symposium, TSMC's deputy co-COO laid out the packaging roadmap, interposer size scaling from a 9.5x reticle in 2027 to 14x by 2028. But raw fabrication is only half the chain. AI chips do not work without CoWoS, chip-on-wafer-on-substrate advanced packaging, the process that binds an AI accelerator to its high-bandwidth memory. Without that step, the most advanced chip in the world is inert silicon. TSMC's CoWoS capacity roughly doubled, from about 35,000 wafers monthly in late 2024 to nearly 80,000 by end of 2025, and even that expansion has been the primary constraint limiting NVIDIA's GPU shipments for over 2 years, funded by over $40 billion in 2025 capital spending aimed mostly at EUV tooling and new fabs. That's the invisible reason your NVIDIA order takes months instead of weeks. It isn't the chip. It's the glue holding the chip to its memory. One foundry. 3/4 of its revenue concentrated in 2 node generations. The single packaging step every AI chip needs. This is not diversification, it is convergence. And every hyperscaler racing to build AI infrastructure is racing toward the exact same narrow gate. That narrow gate is where NVIDIA's entire empire now funnels through. NVIDIA's fiscal 2026 revenue reached $215.9 billion, up 65% year-over-year, and its data center segment alone brought in $193.7 billion of that, a figure almost entirely manufactured on TSMC's leading-edge lines. In the fourth quarter alone, data center revenue hit a record $62.3 billion. NVIDIA does not own a single fab. It designs, TSMC builds. Speaking on a podcast that same month, Jensen Huang framed the bottleneck differently: once a manufacturing process is proven, scale follows fast, from 1 unit to 10 to 1 million. NVIDIA reportedly carries close to $95 billion in supply commitments, the large majority of it flowing directly to TSMC to lock in future capacity. That is not a purchase order. That is a company pre-buying its own survival years in advance, because the alternative is losing its place in the queue behind every other buyer chasing the same 44 machines a year. And NVIDIA is not alone at that gate. AMD's MI300 series, Google's TPUs, Apple's M-series and A-series chips, every leading AI accelerator on Earth is fabricated on the same leading-edge TSMC lines. Competing chip designers, in theory rivals, are in practice standing in the identical line, dependent on the identical machine, inside the identical company. Both TSMC's 20F annual filing and NVIDIA's own 10K name this concentration explicitly as a disclosed risk factor, not outside speculation, but an admission written into the company's own regulatory filings. That is not a narrative. That is a legal disclosure. A moat, in strategy language, usually means a defensible advantage a company controls. NVIDIA's moat is chip design brilliance, but the wall protecting it is built, staffed, and operated entirely by someone else. Even NVIDIA's own diversification instinct points back to the same place. The $150 billion a year Taiwan commitment from Nexnetia's opening was not a hedge. It was confirmation. The most resource-rich AI company on the planet, with every incentive to spread its risk, is doubling down on the island instead of walking away from it. Which raises the question every serious investor now has to answer: what happens if the island itself becomes the risk? Nexnetia Global. The island is where this entire chain physically lives, and TSMC itself has already started answering the question of what happens if that concentration becomes untenable. TSMC is expanding geographically, Arizona, in the United States, where an initial $65 billion pledge has already been expanded to $165 billion for 6 fabs, 2 packaging plants, and a research center, Kumamoto, Japan, Dresden, Germany. Each new site is a direct hedge against the geopolitical concentration risk sitting in Taiwan, the way a bank builds redundant data centers, not because failure is expected, but because being wrong about it is existential. But none of these new sites yet run TSMC's most advanced nodes at Taiwan's volumes. Replicating a fab is not like replicating a warehouse, it requires an entire ecosystem, specialized suppliers, a decades-trained workforce, and calibration between TSMC's engineers and ASML's machines built over years. You cannot airlift institutional knowledge. That is the real shape of the risk. It is not that Taiwan will inevitably face disruption. It is that there is currently no functioning substitute if it does, and the company closest to the problem, TSMC itself, is spending billions of dollars confirming that the risk is real enough to price into its own capital allocation, even while its most advanced production stays anchored exactly where it has always been. So trace the full chain back to where it started. A machine only one company can build. A production process only one foundry can run at true scale. A concentration of that foundry's revenue in exactly the nodes AI depends on. A packaging bottleneck constraining shipments industry-wide. A dependency chain so tight that the designers of the world's most valuable chips do not control the physical means of making a single one of them. And underneath all of it, a single geography carrying risk that even the company living inside it cannot fully engineer away. That is not a supply chain. That is a single point of failure wearing $1 trillion market capitalization as camouflage. So return to the paradox this analysis opened with: why the world's most valuable AI company would commit $150 billion a year to a single island instead of diversifying away from it. The answer is the whole chain just traced. There was nowhere else to put that money. The machine, the foundry, and the workforce capable of running both at true scale exist in exactly one place, and no balance sheet, however large, can currently buy a substitute into existence. The villain was never a company or a person. It was the choke point itself, a physics-bound monopoly that cannot be replicated, bypassed, or diversified away within any relevant timeframe. NVIDIA does not control it. Microsoft does not control it. Google and Amazon do not control it. ASML controls the machine. TSMC controls the only fab running it at true scale. Taiwan carries the geography underneath both. Every AI roadmap on Earth, every claimed competitive moat, a meaningful share of the gains driving the S&P 500, all of it sits downstream of a single bottleneck. Nexnetia's analysis is not a prediction of collapse. It is a statement of structure. The AI economy has been built on top of a foundation with exactly one supplier, exactly one operator, and exactly one geography, and every dollar of enterprise value stacked above that foundation is only as secure as the machine underneath it. Consider what this means for pricing the sector. Analysts model NVIDIA, TSMC, and the hyperscalers as separate risk profiles. That framing understates the truth. When one supplier's ceiling sets the maximum output for every AI chip on Earth, these are correlated exposures to the same constraint, dressed up as separate tickers. A shock to the machine is a shock to the entire sector, simultaneously, everywhere at once. The chip designers write the code. The machine writes the physics. And physics does not negotiate. So ask yourself, when every competitor in this industry depends on the same 44 machines a year, is it still competition, or is it just the same risk, wearing different logos? Nexnetia Intelligence tracks the infrastructure decisions the market has not priced in yet. Subscribe for the analysis that gets published before it becomes consensus.